Coming up on Fresh Freedom, episode 38, Biden's regulatory assault on your home appliances, the fight to protect life at conception, and a real chance to repeal Obamacare. Welcome to the Fresh Freedom Podcast, featuring freedom-focused representatives who are fighting for conservative values and defending your constitutional rights. I'm Nate Lucas, and tonight, joining Representative Eric Burleson is Representative Gary Palmer from Alabama's 6th Congressional District. Representative Palmer is a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee as well as the Committee on Government Oversight and Reform. And both of you are on the subcommittee on economic growth, energy policy, and regulatory affairs, which Representative Burleson will chair. So with all of that, Congressman, it's great to be with you.
Thanks for having me on, Nate and Eric.
Great to have you on. You got some amazing committees. I think you probably have the two, like 1-2 punch committees, or E&C, which is like the big policy committee. That what do they say? E&C, the purview of E&C is like 80-90% of the economy.
And then you got oversight, which is, the purview of oversight is it's my favorite committee to be on.
And I chair the on Energy and Commerce. I chair the subcommittee on oversight and investigation. So I think they're trying to send me a message here,
A lot of overlap on oversight, which is a good thing. This government certainly needs it.
I've talked with Chairman Comer, who chairs the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, about doing some collaborative hearings with Energy and Commerce Oversight and Investigations. And I think there's some real opportunities here to address some issues that didn't get addressed during the Biden administration. Particularly,
maybe we can do a collaborative.
Well,
because you're subcommittee chairman of that, and I'm subcommittee chair of the one in oversight. Maybe we could do a committee on some of these issues.
Well, we're looking for those opportunities, and
like EV mandates, the light bulb, regulations. That's what we're looking into. The energy crunch.
My wife has already made it clear to bring back regular light bulbs.
Amen.
So I think there's some real opportunities in this Congress. And, I'm a bit of a historian, an amateur historian. And I've tried to explain this to our colleagues. Eric, you've heard me say this before, that we have an opportunity right now for a historic conference, for a historic Congress. And but you don't achieve greatness doing easy things.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that we need to do, that the country needs for us to do, that are going to be difficult. But I think we're capable. And I think with President Trump in the White House again, with the talent that we have in Congress, and this freshman class that we have is, in my opinion, no disrespect to your class or mine, maybe the best I've seen since I've been in Congress, and that includes when I ran a think tank and did a lot of work up here with Congress, leading a think tank effort. They're very, very talented and I think very focused. And if our conference of the Republicans in the House will stick together, I think we can do some great things, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk energy. The Democrats certainly shoved their green energy scam right in everybody's face. Mm-hmm. This CRA versus Biden's war on gas water heaters is something that you've introduced,
right.
and Eric, of course, you're very familiar with it. This really isn't about the environment, and the cost on the consumer at the end of the day is just so absurd.
We've enriched Russia. We've enriched Iran through the Biden energy policies. And if you recall, the first week of the Biden administration, they terminated the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. That would have been 830,000 barrels of Canadian oil that would be going to U.S. refineries. Instead, we're buying over 600,000 barrels of Russian oil per day, literally blood money. Iran was basically bankrupt. They had maybe $3 billion, maybe $4 billion in their sovereign account because of the Trump policies. We, the Biden administration, enriched them. But the thing that happened that week, not only did he terminate the Keystone XL pipeline agreement, he terminated an agreement with Israel, Cyprus, and Greece to build a pipeline, natural gas pipeline from the East Mediterranean to Italy that would have supplied natural gas to Southern Europe. All that same week, and energy futures immediately went up. So we were, the first week in office, Biden put us on an inflationary path. So our ability to deal with this through the Congressional Review Act is limited because we have to introduce this and get it passed within 60 legislative days of the rule going into effect, and most of that has expired. Now, the gas hot water heater, we got that in time. I think there's other things that we're going to have to do legislatively, and we need to force the Democrats to debate it. And we need to do it in collaboration with the Trump administration. But I think getting our energy policy right is the first step to bringing down inflation. But also, and I think the president's spot on with this, because I've been asked last year to meet with some of his campaign staff, policy staff about this, and I told them then that on energy and critical minerals and rare earth elements, we have to address this immediately. It is a national security issue. I've shared this with some people today. On critical minerals, your phones don't work, your control panels and your washing machine don't work, the avionics for fighter aircraft won't work, and there's not a single major refinery for rare earth elements in the Western Hemisphere. There's only 9 in the world, 8 of them are in China, the other one's in Malaysia. So,
but we have them over here.
We've got the rare earth elements. We just don't have the processing and refining, and we're not mining enough, Eric. So what I suggested to them was that we utilize the Defense Production Act. So first, the same day he was inaugurated, a couple of weeks ago, President declares energy as a national security emergency, which means we can use the Defense Production Act and permit on day one. That's that I think is not only going to help us in a national security perspective, but I think it's the very first volley fired at getting inflation down.
What do you think the root is, though, of why they're coming after consumers' household appliances? It's hard to fathom. There's so many other things that they could tackle, but they want to take out your gas stoves and make sure that your gas water heater. I mean, what kind of livelihood do they want you to live?
To me, it's become a religion. I mean, they have a fervor about it, like as though it's something that's they're just trying to outdo each other, right? And so, and the God that they're worshiping is the planet, right? But
that's part of it.
And so when they say, when they're talking about how climate change is an existential, problem, they really believe that. And the problem is that they're not rational in their response to it. Even if that was true, eliminating people's, gas stove is not going to change anything.
I think you're right that for some of them it's a religion. They really believe this. But on the other hand, too, and no disrespect to people who have these degrees, but I've told people that the good news is I'm surrounded by people on energy and commerce and Congress that have science degrees. The bad news is it's political science. They really don't. I worked for 2 international engineering companies, and one of them was in combustion engineering and their environmental systems. I know what it takes to control emissions and improve our environmental quality. We have spent trillions of dollars doing that and have made tremendous progress. So I know what we can do technologically. The other thing, though, is that they don't embrace what is truly clean energy, like small modular nuclear. And these advanced reactors, for instance, can recycle what we consider spent fuel. We've got spent fuel rods encased in concrete in 39 states. Those rods retain 90% of their energy capacity. We can recover 98% of it. I asked the director of the National Nuclear Laboratory how long we could operate our nuclear fleet just using spent rods. He said over 100 years. Wow. So we would no longer be reliant on foreign sources for uranium pellets. We could pick and choose what we wanted to buy and when we wanted to buy it. And these small modular reactors will operate 60 years, maybe longer, properly maintained. It's the same concept reactor that we use in our nuclear fleet, the submarines. And the aircraft carriers. They're much more mobile than your typical power generation facilities. You can they're not as site sensitive. In other words, you don't have to have a massive build out of transmission lines for these, and you could put two. A small modular reactor top capacity is about 300 megawatts. You could put two of those on about 640 acres. To get the same amount of power generation from a turbine farm would require 77,000 acres, and that doesn't count the transmission lines. And like I said, these not only will operate for 60 years, they operate 24/7. You maintain a base load where your turbines or your solar power generation is intermittent. If it's cloudy for several days, you're going to have to have a backup source. Literally was in a hearing with one of these people who's just adamant about getting rid of all hydrocarbon, and I pointed that out and her response was, "Well, we'll back it up with natural gas." I said, "Well, you just admitted that intermittent doesn't work." So it's really strange how they talk about follow the science on everything, but except this.
Energy independence sometimes gets lost in the shuffle because it might not be the sexiest thing to talk about as far as, securing the border, reducing the debt. But energy independence, as you just mentioned kind of a minute ago, is truly a national security issue.
Exactly.
And if we don't have it, we are so prone to disaster.
We've seen the cracking of the infrastructure when it comes to our electricity grid. We saw that happen with Winter Storm Uri. I will never forget whenever that was happening. It was negative. It was at least negative 10 degrees for 2 weeks straight in Springfield, Missouri. And I'll never forget looking out the window, hearing about brownouts and what was happening with people losing their lives in Texas. And I remember seeing on my back porch, the coal-fired power plant in our community was fired up and it was going. And I was like, thank God we have this. I don't care what they were burning when it's negative, when it's in the negative teens and your kids are going to bed at night, you're just thankful that there's some heat, right?
Well, Europe is finding this out the hard way. The Economist magazine a couple of years ago had a report stating that there were, I want to say, somewhere in the range of 67,000 people that were classified as excess winter deaths. What that meant was that these were people whose source of power was from turbines or solar, and it was so expensive they couldn't afford to adequately heat their homes, and
ultimately died.
And ultimately died. They didn't freeze to death, but they had other issues like respiratory or cardiovascular. And the British Medical Journal, Lancet, had published a report that there's 17 times more people die from cold-related illnesses than heat. I've talked to a lot of diplomats and officials from Europe, and I was talking with some folks about people were going out. They were getting these wood stoves, and they were going out and cutting down trees to burn in their homes to stay warm. I mean, this where we've gone with this is really, as you said, I think a religion. But I think what concerns me is it may be more about power and money than it is anything else. And a lot of these people think the world's got too many people. There's about 3 billion people that don't have adequate access to power. There's, I forget, about 800 million that have zero access to power. So we have a chance, I think, with the Trump administration and with this Congress to really work with our Western allies to help these emerging economies build out their power grids with natural gas. It's the cleanest hydrocarbon fuel out there. And I think if we did that and these countries could develop a middle class over time, it brings more stability in terms of of national security, but it also allows them to develop an economy that becomes a marketplace for us. But these are longer-term strategies that I think we need to be looking at right now.
Are you confident that your colleagues, this CRA, will pass the support?
Well, it's going to pass the House.
Yeah.
And I think it'll pass the Senate, and President Trump will sign it because
That would be awesome.
well, a Congressional Review Act's not subject to filibuster in the Senate, so
There you
it's
go.
we'll encourage the Majority Leader, Mr. Thune, Senator Thune, to get this on the floor, and there's some others out there too that I think can pass. You know, in Trump's first term, the first 14 or 15 bills we passed were all CRAs, and I think that's what jump started the economy.
I want to make sure that we touch on the topic of healthcare. You know, you are such a policy leader on so many things in the House, and I really appreciate you. One of my favorite bills, period, in all of the legislature is your bill, the New Opportunities,
New Health Options Act.
New Health Options bill, which is basically, I mean, if you want to let everybody know how that bill works, but Obamacare is a disaster. We need to provide a new solution, and I think that this is a very smart way to do it.
Yeah, Obamacare has been a complete lie. It has not eliminated people without insurance. What it's done is it's made it even more difficult to have private health insurance because the premiums have gone up so much. So what I introduced in the last Congress, and I'm bringing back this Congress, is the New Health Options Act that will create a parallel marketplace. I mean, if you like your Obamacare, you can keep your Obamacare, and
you can actually keep it. Unlike
if you want to pay more and have limited access, knock yourself out.
Right.
But if you want to enroll in a health insurance plan that will allow you to decide what coverage you need, that will cover your pre-existing conditions, that will bring down your premiums in every age bracket, that will expand the health savings account options, that really empowers the individual in terms of their health care and their health insurance decisions, then this New Health Options plan will be for you, and I think there'll be a lot of people that will want to do that. We're not going to touch the Obamacare subsidies. It's like I say, if people decide that's the way they want to go and continue to pay the higher premiums, then okay. But I think the people who are good at math are going to want this new options.
I think it's awesome. I think that, and that's why I hope that we don't lay that topic off on the side. I know that we weren't able to repeal Obamacare in 2017, but I think that the American people have realized Obamacare is not its popularity is cratering, and I don't think there's a better time than now to find a better solution.
I think the Trump administration will be very supportive of this. We've got a bit of education to do on the Senate side, which has already started. I think this is a really good bill, but it will be subject to filibuster on the other side. But I think the key here is messaging, and which we haven't always been really spectacular at. But I think when people understand what this is about, I think we'll win that debate. And as you may recall, Margaret Thatcher famously said, you have to win the debate before you win the vote. So the more we can educate our members and outside groups about this legislation and get this out to the people, the more pressure I think it puts on Democrats to allow this. They say they're for choice, and we're not going to repeal Obamacare. I think this is an opportunity for them to show that they truly do support choice.
Messaging is such a huge part of the battle. I mean, we just saw the federal asset freeze get rescinded because the messaging war was won in like 24 hours. They cultivated an army to go out there and blast that Medicare, Social Security, SNAP benefits, student aid, that was all being frozen. And it was like, no, none of those benefits were being touched. They were just lying. But their messaging was so, it blanketed their constituents, and it seemed to have an effect.
Well, needless to say, that could have been done better. But the thing that gives me hope is the fact that they told so many lies about Trump during the campaign, and none of them stuck. I mean, they were literally calling him Hitler, and they tried all this outrageous stuff. So what we need to do is remind the American people of how dishonest the Democrats were during the campaign, and that leopard hasn't changed its spots.
It's a great line. Let's finish with the Life at Conception Act. This has been around for a while. It is circulated around Congress. It has never passed the House. But Eric, it is a bill that you have sponsored in the 119th Congress. Essentially, it would extend the 14th Amendment protections to the unborn. You are a co-sponsor of this bill, and I know that protecting the unborn has been something that both of you have advocated for your entire lives.
Yeah, this was Alex Mooney's bill when he was here this last Congress, and I was a co-sponsor. I know you were too. And whenever he, stepped out to run for Senate, I reached out to him and asked, "Is anybody taking up this bill?" And so happy to do it. I think we need to have the conversation and move the Overton window in a direction that supports life. And I think that this is a great way to do that. And so I don't have any pretenses that this is going to pass, but at least we're having the dialogue over, on this topic.
I think this goes back to what I was saying a moment ago about winning the debate. I think that we need to message this in a way that people truly are thoughtful about it. Get the emotion out of it as much as you can, despite the fact that it's a very emotional issue. But there are a lot of people out there that understand this from a personal perspective because their mom had them out of wedlock, or their family started with an out of wedlock pregnancy, and really, having this discussion about humanity, because that's really what it's about. Is when you're talking about when does life begin? As a Christian, I come from the perspective that it's all a divine origin. We're made in the image and likeness of God from the moment you're conceived to the time you cross over into eternity. Not everybody has that perspective, but I think that we need to be able to talk about this in a way that people have a whole different perspective about it. It's instead of just getting locked up in this abortion and choice and all that stuff.
Yeah. I think that for me, the way that I kind of pitch it is that my perspective is that the moment of conception, an entirely new individual has been created that will never, ever have a chance, that will never be another person like it. And it's like a snowflake. It's completely unique. And because of how precious that is and how unique and how valuable that one unique individual is, why would you want to extinguish that? And so why not, if we can agree that that's the goal, that the goal isn't to extinguish these, individuals, then we can have the discussion, okay, then what's the best way to go about making sure that the mother is taken care of, that she has the least amount of difficulty carrying that child to term, or what can we do to lessen that? I would rather have that conversation than the conversation of, is life valuable, right? And when is it valuable?
There's so many aspects of this, though. You got on one side, we were talking about climate change and how so many of those people think there's too many people. That's just, for them, another human being is just another carbon footprint. On the other hand, I think you would agree with this, you guys would agree with this, that we look at it in the context of human potential. And I think of this in the same way that I think about welfare and what welfare has cost us, not in terms of dollars, but in terms of human potential. And how many lives have been snuffed out or been trapped in a welfare trap that would have been great doctors, like a Ben Carson, great artists, great athletes, great teachers, and I could go on, and how we have diminished the quality of all of our lives by not embracing the human potential that's out there. And I think that's the thing that I would try to get across to people is I know people personally that are enormously talented. History has these people. There was a woman who was 3 months pregnant before she finally got married, and the guy that got her pregnant was a drug addict. Mm. But she had that child, and that child was Winston Churchill. So
wow.
Where would the world be today without Winston Churchill? And I could go on down the line. Mm-hmm. Think about the lives that Ben Carson saved, and just so I really think we need to be looking at this in the context of human potential and the value that people bring to our lives. Mm-hmm. And every one of us can think of dozens of people that have meant so much to us that we thank God they were there.
It all goes back to messaging and storytelling. It's pretty awesome. Well, we are in the third week of Trump-Vance administration, and it's been a blitz. Is it fun to be entrenched right in the middle of everything?
Yeah, this is a whirlwind, and I don't know that we can keep up with everything that's going on. But it seems like Congress is going to have to be reactive, which is probably good because we tend to. From the last 2 years, my experience is Congress is not real bold. So I'm glad to see Trump being bold and maybe gives us the courage to come in afterwards and pass the policies.
It's the most aggressive Congress, and despite the fact that we're kind of in the backdraft of Trump a little bit here, but it reminds me of when Newt Gingrich became Speaker, the first 100 days of the contract with America, and where we're a little behind on this is that we've never really laid out a real agenda from the congressional side, and I think some of my private conversations during the campaign with the Trump people, with his policy guys, and some that I've had since then, Trump's on the right track, but I think they need to realize that it's not that Congress needs a role, it's that Congress has a role, and that the Constitution comes into play in some of these. It's like this discussion about eliminating the Department of Education. Well, that can't be done by executive order. The Department of Education was created by act of Congress, so it will take an act of Congress. And my suggestion to the Trump team and to the Republicans in the House is that we transform the Department of Education into the Department of Workforce Development and roll it into the Department of Commerce, and block grant the money back to the states with a heavy concentration on STEM education.
Oh, I like that.
Because the fact that we're having another debate over expanding H-1B visas because we need engineers and technically trained people here is an indictment of our education system. Mm-hmm. And nobody really thinks of it like that. They're just looking at what we need instead of thinking, why do we need all these people? It's because we've done a very poor job here. And so I think that's the way to go, and I think President Trump has already shown a very strong commitment to school choice, which I think is going to help us there. And then systematically look at these things. When we had that, I was in a smaller meeting with Musk and Ramaswamy about DOGE, and I pointed out that there's some things that they want to do in terms of rolling back regulations that are going to be subject to the Administrative Procedures Act, which will require public comment. But there's a way to avoid that if you can show the harm that these regulations are causing, and it has a good cause provision that we can utilize. So as fast as the president's going, we need to remind him that not only does he need to work with Congress, in some of these he has to work with Congress.
Indeed. Congressman, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Excellent.
For having me on.
And be sure to follow their official accounts on X at Rep. Eric Burleson and at US Rep. Gary Palmer. You can catch Fresh Freedom on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, X, and Rumble. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stand strong, stay informed, and keep fighting for freedom.